So I was watching Brownie's magic push-up video the other day, just like everyone else does, when I heard him say this.
Because it is easier than a one-arm push-up, I think.
But I know that's not true, and so does he.
Maybe I was wrong all along.
I get it, it's really confusing, and it took me way longer to start to understand than I expected. But before I get to explaining how this works, answer this question for me. When I go into a magic push-up, will my weight on the scale go up, down, or stay the same compared to my regular one arm? I'm keeping my feet in the same position, so my weight distribution on my feet versus my hands didn't change. Well, the answer is the weight on the scale actually goes down. What? Isn't the same weight on the pole? And how is it harder than the one-arm push-up if there's less weight on the scale? Let's dissect what's going on here. So I'm putting about 100 pounds of my weight on my arms in a normal push-up position. My other 70 pounds are on my feet. And this stays the same whether I have one arm or two arms on the pole. If I put scales under each side of the pole, the scales will show half the weight. We only get more weight on one scale when we move closer to it on the stick. And once we make it all the way to one side, all of the weight is on the scale. Now, this is where it gets interesting. So my pulling arm is taking the weight that would have been on our scale in the earlier example. And although this seems very apparent, what you're probably not thinking about is that we know our pushing arm is still having to take the same 100 pounds just being in a push-up position. Remember this example? So quick summary, 100 pounds at least on our pushing arm. Pulling arm cannot assist at all with pushing, and pulling arm is supporting at least a few pounds. Now there's a lot more going on here than just adding this weight to my pushing arm and calling it an X pound weighted one arm push-up. But leverages get really complicated and it seriously started going over my head. I think I'm gonna have to call in someone's help to understand these leverages. Destin, can you explain to me with snatch blocks? But regardless of science, this version of the magic push-up is no doubtedly harder than a one-arm push-up. And you probably already knew that. Well, maybe you didn't know the physics, but you kind of understood that it was harder than the one-arm version. If you watched Brownie or Magnus Mitbo's magic pull-up video, it's clear to see that they're being more challenged by the magic version compared to the regular one arm. And I know I kind of cherry-picked that clip from Brownie saying that he thought it was more difficult than the one-arm push-up. He did mention that he was probably wrong later in the video, so to be clear, I'm not throwing any shade at Brownie. Mad respect to the dude. I just wanted to clear this up for anyone that might be confused. So now that we know how it works, what are people doing to make it easier? Well, the less weight we have to pull on our secondary arm, the closer it gets to a one-arm push-up. And if we can push at all with our secondary arm, it starts turning into an assisted one-arm push-up. That's why you see people moving their hands towards the object the pole is resting on. It puts a lot less weight on your pulling arm. Same thing with this pole on the floor variation. It isn't taking much force to pull this side up. And just like any other push-up, going into a wide straddle shortens your overall length, making the weight get distributed more on your feet. The straddle can also help with pulling as you can press into the ground here to make the pole easier to lift. So I hope you found that informative. That's all for now. I'll see you soon.